Hello and welcome to another episode of Releasing Your Inner Dragon with Drake and Marie. I am Marie Mullaney and I'm a fantasy author and YouTuber, and with me as always is my co-host Drake.
I am Drake. I'm an award-winning novelist. I teach writing all over the world. I've written in pretty much every medium that exists.
Yep. And today we are going to discuss our top gripes that we read over and over again in fantasy writing, published or unpublished.
So this is one of those, when you're watching a show and it's in like the 7th season and they have that one episode that's a flashback episode and they just go back and they show the same video that you've already seen because you've watched every episode, and you know that they're starting to maybe draw blanks on what ideas to use. This is kind of what that show is going to be like, because a lot of what we're going to talk about today we've actually talked about in previous episodes. But Marie's been critiquing some people here recently, and we were talking about that, and she was like, oh my goodness, again this came up. And I laughed. I was like, oh, I've actually had 2 private clients that had the exact same thing again. And we were like, we should do a flashback episode, because we are, not necessarily running out of things to talk about, but we have been doing this for 2 years. And so we are, always looking for new ideas. And on that note, if you guys have suggestions on what you want us to talk about, head on over to YouTube if you're listening on podcasts, because we don't get the notes, from all the different podcast platforms. Most of them don't even have a place where you can actually do notes. Head on over to podcasts, or you can send us an email at
releasingyourinnerdragon@gmail.com. It is in the podcast description. So
yes, send us an email. Just say, hey, you know what? I would actually be really interested if you guys would talk about this topic or that topic. And we would love to hear those, help basically become a producer on the show. Help us figure out the topics that we're going to talk about.
And don't forget that we do editing and so on. So if you send us like 500 words or 1,000 words or so on, then we will edit it and we'll change the names of your characters to, protect your anonymity. And we'll send you the document with our comments in afterwards. So,
yep. If you're brave enough to let us edit you live on air,
absolutely,
send that. We need to push that. We haven't done that in a while. We should do one of those. Somebody needs to send
those were fun. Somebody should send us something. They're fun to do. So send us something you're writing. So, and while you're down there commenting, do hit the like button, subscribe button, all those things.
Share it with your friends. I know you know somebody else who writes that would get benefit out of these podcasts.
Somebody who hasn't seen it yet and goes like, so what is this podcast about? You can be like, they rant about this stuff. Yes. Okay, so I will start. I hate and despise, and it is getting worse with every time that I see it. I hate flashbacks. I hate them so much right now.
We can talk about flashbacks, but that's actually not what you brought up.
Okay, so it's not. It's in that category, but it's not actually a flashback. So this is when I think the device is called borrowing tension from the future.
I call it the 8 hours earlier.
Yes. But so what this thing did that I was reading was it set up an assassination of a character. Yeah. Like not a POV character, but like a secondary character. So there's like 2 or 3 chapters that sets up the relationships and then kills the character in an assassination. And you're like, oh man, like her husband was possessed. It's a urban fantasy. It's this whole like paranormal. It's going to be a whole chase thing, to figure out like what was going on while the police are after him and all the rest of that. So right after the chapter where the best friend finds the corpse, it jumps to 5 years into the past in some Hicksville, Montana, where there's a bunch of doom preppers living behind a magic shield. And they're like, they get into training a girl to be an assassin. With the, like this is the girl that assassinated the woman who died in the first 2 chapters. And I'm like, but you've just told me all of the tension, that you just.
So the girl is the one that possessed the human and used the husband and used the husband to kill the wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
The entirety of the tension that you built up in these 2 episodes, gone. Just like that. By going 5 years into the past. Pick one of those stories that you're telling me. You're either telling me the story of the dude who gets possessed and is trying to figure out what happened to him.
It wasn't me. It was the one-armed man.
Yes. Or, exactly. Or, man, that was such a good movie. I watched it again the other day. The Fugitive. Oh, it was good. Or you're telling me the story of the girl who is being raised to be an assassin, and there's the conflict of, will she actually do it?
It was me. I was the one-armed man.
Yes. But now what you've
done... I had
no
other joke for that.
Is you've told me the solution to both stories. I know the girl grows up to be an assassin because I've seen the corpse on the floor.
Yep.
And I know the guy definitely didn't kill his wife because the girl grows up to do that.
Yep.
And I know who to kill. I'm like,
yeah. And I've talked about I've talked about the 8 hours earlier. It's just, I don't know why this plot device won't die. And it shows up in massive big productions. You know, it was in I think it was the second John Wick starts off at the end and then moves to the front. I stopped watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the second episode. I think it ran for several seasons. Stopped watching the second episode because it was one of those
terminal list, right? So I was like, I'm gonna watch this because I've read like good things about it. The first episode opens with a funeral, right? So they open with a funeral, and they show you the whole funeral. They show you the names of the people dead, everything else. And then they're like, 2 weeks earlier, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Sorry, we're on YouTube. Are you kidding me? And I switched the TV off and I was like, I'm done. Because you've just shown me that those people are dead.
Right.
Now you want to go 2 weeks. I don't care how they got to the point where they're dead. They're dead.
Right. It does not build the tension that you think it builds. It does not earn any type of loyalty from the audience that you think it earns. It does not enhance your story in any way that you think that it does. It is a plot device that absolutely needs to die. You know, and then the hero walked in the door and the villain shot him in the heart and he's dead 12 hours earlier. Like, no, stop. It does not work. What works is, and this is the way I always say, imagine the Matrix. Everyone loves the Matrix. Imagine the opening scene of the Matrix is Neo running down the hallway in some weird building. There's a phone ringing. We don't know what's going on. He opens the door, he busts into the room, and there's this weird white dude with a giant cannon in his hand that goes bang, 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 bang. And Neo, gets hit in the chest, thrown against the wall, slowly slides down, blood covering his chest, and his head droops to the side and his eyes closed. And then it goes 12 hours earlier. Imagine that movie. Now you know where it's going to end. You know he's going to die. It takes everything out of it. That scene, when he actually dies at the end, when you think that he's finally got it figured out, is so impactful. Now he has to. It's a Jesus Christ story. He has to die and rise from the dead. It's a part. We know this innately. But you didn't throw it in my face. So when it happens, it actually has impact. Whereas if you had done it at the beginning of that, it no longer matters. That plot device does not work. I've never seen it work. Actually, I have seen it work.
I think there was a TV show, 24, that they used to show the end and then they show.
Yeah, no, I don't think it worked in 24.
Oh, okay.
I do think it worked in one show.
Okay.
I think it worked in Breaking Bad. At least, in some aspects. I think they did use it wrong a couple of times as the series went on. But like the scene opens up and you're looking at a pool. It's just it's a close up of this little, maybe 3-foot area of what is obviously a backyard swimming pool. And then this teddy bear comes floating by, and it is scorched, and half of its head is burnt off, and then it floats by. And it means nothing. And they never mention the show, and it has no impact on anything. And it later you find out where it came from, but it still has nothing to do with the characters. It still has nothing to do with really the story. It's just this mind screw in your head. And it's the same thing. The first episode, even the first episode opens, and you're in the desert, and there's this RV going way faster than an RV should ever be doing down a dirt road, and it's sliding all over the place and bouncing up in the air. And as it races past the camera, a kind of like a hazmat suit comes flying out the door of the RV, and it floats in the air, and it lands on the ground, and the camera looks at it. And then it says, 2 days earlier, and you meet this science professor in a classroom teaching a high school science class.
But I put it to you that the reason why it worked is because
it doesn't impact anything.
Yes, but it is completely
because the scene happens.
Mysterious.
Yes.
Right?
But also it doesn't impact anything. It's not. No. Yes, later we do see that scene again. We do see the RV racing down, but because we saw an RV racing through the desert, and because we saw these, pants fly out and land in the desert, we have no context. Yeah. It isn't a hero being shot in the chest. It isn't,
it's not the funeral of a SEAL team.
Right.
Which I'm then going to watch die.
Right. It has no impact on anything. It's just a mystery that makes you go, what the crap?
Yeah.
What is this? And so when it does happen, you don't even know that you're right before it happens. You don't even know you're in the scene that you're about to see that happen, because it makes it doesn't connect with anything because it has no impact. And I did think that was kind of cool.
It was, but I will say that even then, you are still effectively just borrowing tension from the future.
Yeah.
Right? And so what you're actually saying is, I don't think my story is strong enough right now. So I need you to have this little thing to look forward to.
Yeah. That is actually a great way to describe that.
I would argue that if you find yourself stepping into that trap, maybe strengthen your story.
If your story is not strong enough in the beginning to open up and hold the reader's attention, then maybe you should, I don't know, do a different career. Because
maybe you should strengthen your story, and not try and borrow tension from the future.
Yeah.
Because Breaking Bad may have done it well, but they are a rare exception in a sea of abject failure.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that it was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was just egregious.
Yeah.
So it was in the second episode, we had already met the agent's jet, so we knew that the jet existed. And in the second episode, it opens up, and there's the jet, and it's flying through the air, and the side of the jet blows out, and a bunch of bodies get flung out of it into nothingness. Mm-hmm. And then it says 12 hours earlier. And I just put my head down, and I was like, I'm so angry that they're going to do this. I don't want to do it. But I kept watching. It was actually at the end when they finally broke me, and I stopped watching it. Because we go through the whole episode, they end up on the jet, they end up getting captured on their own jet and locked into the cell in the back, and the bad guys have control of the jet, and the heroes are now locked in the cell. And one of the heroes says, I can get us out of this, but you're not going to like it. And so when he said that, I was like, yeah, you're going to blow up the jet. And that would have been okay, and I would have gone with it, and I would have been very disappointed. But what infuriated me, they said, what is it going to be? And he goes, come closer. And on screen, he actually put his hand over his head, and he went, I'm like, why are you whispering to I know what your plan is. You've already shown it to me. You blew up the jet. Like, you're going to pretend that I don't remember something that happened 30 minutes ago? Like, I was so furious that was so degrading to the audience that I turned it off. And I did not watch that show again until it had been canceled, because I'm like, you're a crap writer. Like, first of all, the plot device was crap anyway, but then to have him whisper something I already knew in front of me on camera, Like, I was so furious. I was so angry with that. Because
Yeah.
that was pouring salt onto the wound, is what that was for me.
I think the reason why Terminal List irritated me so much is somewhat for the same reason. Because the SEAL team, I watched the funeral of the SEAL team. And now you want me to be invested in how they died. And how they died is basically shot. You know how this is a thing that I freaking hate about modern TV in the last year or so. Everything is shot in the dark. It is
Yeah.
not a podcast.
Yeah.
there was a
That's actually been a thing in movies and TV for about the last 7-8 years, where they've made things very, very dark, and they've also made the audio quality where you really can't hear anything.
The freaking next Batman is going to be a podcast, like the way they're going. But
actually, me and you should produce the next Batman. We'll take a camera, we'll set it up in a closet, and we'll put clothes on the camera, and then we'll act out the scenes out in the bedroom with the camera just locked in a closet with clothes on top of it. And whatever it picks up, that's the movie. We'll just show that.
I swear.
Because yes, you're right. It literally is coming to that point.
There's an episode of Game of Thrones where they're down in like Flea Bottom or whatever, in the new Game of Thrones, where it's like it's so dark. I was like, I can't see anybody's faces. Like, what is even the point of this? Anyway, so
the first thing I do when I start playing a new game, is I go into settings and I grab the brightness and I jack it to max, and I grab the contrast and I jack it to max, and then I start playing the game.
I cannot be asked to play this stuff in the dark. But anyway,
yeah.
So this Terminal List. So now they've shown me the funeral, and then they show me this half shot in the dark action sequence of guys shooting each other, getting caught in traps, whatever, in the sewer system. I have no context for why they're in the sewer system or anything like that, but I know they died there.
Yeah. Yeah. So why even bother? And think about it.
If you wanted to do it this way, reverse the episode.
Right.
Start
just
with the guys.
Have me start in the sewers.
Yeah. Because then I'm like, oh, are they going to make it? Are they going to make it? And then when they die, I'm like, oh, man, I thought they were going to be like.
And then when you go to their funeral, now you're even more invested.
Now it matters to me.
Yeah. It's a plot device that should just die. If you're out there and this is how your book starts, just pause the podcast and go and erase that section of your book, and just don't do it.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it. All right. Moving on.
Yeah.
This happened to me a couple times with a couple different private clients here recently, and I don't know where this is coming from. And this is bad. Like, this is bad because, like, one trend that happened that I really hate is the fact of first person present tense becoming more and more popular. It's not a good POV. It's a weird, awkward POV, but because Hunger Games did it and Hunger Games was successful, the industry has started shoving it down people's throats, especially in the YA markets and all of that. Okay, great. That cancer's already spread. We can't cure it. It can't be cut out of the market. It's there. However, in the last month, I've ran into 2 people trying to write in third person present tense. And this is a cancer that needs to be killed before it even takes root. Like
I will put a book down. If I pick up if I'm critting somebody, fine, I will struggle through it, and I will say I am struggling to read this. But if I pick up a book that is written in third person present tense, I will read the first couple of sentences and put it down.
Yeah.
Because I struggle with that.
And so we can talk about all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, like that it creates awkward sentences, that you actually don't have access to all the verb forms, that manipulation of time becomes very, very difficult. Then it looks like you're actually doing typos when you have a present tense verb and then a past tense verb and then a present tense verb and all this other stuff. We can talk about all the technical aspects of why it actually hurts the experience of the reader. But forget all that. We're in the business of trying to make money getting people to buy our stories. And the reality is, and what do they say? 78% of all statistics are made up on the spot. But I would estimate that about 30 to 40% of readers refuse to read third person present tense. They'll just put the book down. So it's incredibly difficult to get a reader. And what you're doing now is 3 to 4 out of every 10 readers that you get, which are incredibly difficult to get, are going to put your book down because you've chosen a tense that is weird. Like, why would you try to make things that much harder on you for no reason, no benefit? Third person present tense does not enhance a story. Like, a lot of people will say, well, I'm writing in first person present tense because I want to make you feel like it's happening now. Like I liked Hunger Games. I thought I use Collins as the example of, if you want to write first person present tense flawlessly, it's Hunger Games. It has to have a very specific story structure. It has to be a very simplistic story structure, no backstory, no subplots, one character, a very linear story start to finish, no funny business at all in your structure, which is what Hunger Game was. It was a very simple, you can't actually have a more simplistic story. And I'm not talking about world building, because a lot of times when I say, they're like, oh, that was very complicated because it had all, no, that's world building. The story structure was linear. It started in one spot, it went straight forward until the end, and there was no variations at all. It was this one little line. So yes, first person present tense.
Just in case anybody thinks like we're dumping on Hunger Games, it was a very well executed linear story. You can write a linear story that is perfection. Like, don't get me wrong.
But no, we're not saying anything negative about it. I'm explaining it. That's why first person present tense didn't break that story. It's why the next story that came out with that was Divergent, and they also did that in first person present tense, and first person present tense actually hurt that story. Yes, bad writing also hurt that story, but the POV was against them from the start, where the POV wasn't a hindrance to Hunger Games because of the structure of the story, the simplicity of the structure. Hunger Games tried to be a little bit more complex, and therefore the POV literally hurt that complexity. But all that aside, the reality is, or where I was going with that was, a lot of people argue that they're trying to. So the one thing that Susan Collins said that I do disagree with, that I think she's stupid for saying, is she said, well, I wrote it in first person present tense because I wanted you to always think that Katniss may die. And I'm like, no, she's your only narrating character. Unless the last 30 pages of your book are blank pages, she lives. Like, you're not fooling anyone on this.
Unless you switch to omniscient. Like,
right. Right. Unless you do something crazy, like completely write a different story at the end of your story, she's going to live to the end. So you're not fooling anyone. And the other thing is that if you write in true limited, if you're writing in first person or third person free indirect discourse is what you're actually writing. You're not writing in third person limited. You're writing in free indirect discourse. If you're doing that and you're doing it well, your reader will always think that they're in the now. So when you read my stuff in past tense, you don't feel like you're hearing a story in past tense. Now, if you're writing in omniscient, you do. So if the story is, once upon a time, there was an old lady who lived in a shoe. Yes, I'm a narrator and I'm standing next to you right now, and I'm telling you a story that happened in the past. But I don't write that way. That's omniscient. If you write in a true limited, either first person or third person free indirect discourse, and you're writing in past tense and you're writing it well, the reader will feel like it's happening right now. They're in it now. It's happening now. No one ever reads my stuff and goes, wow, this is happening in the past. No, it's written in past tense, but because of how we consume stories, and because they're experiencing it for the first time right now, and there is no third-party narrator, it's happening right now. That is the illusion that's created. So first person or present tense, all that does is limit your verb forms, which verb forms, there's 13 verb forms, which gives us the ability to manipulate time, go back in time, go in the future. We have past tense verb forms, we have perfect past tense verb forms, which happened before past tense. We have present tense verb forms, we have future tense verb forms. If you limit yourself to present tense, you can still access those past tense, and those aren't egregious. But when you go to past perfect tense, it feels like a typo. You have hurt your story. It feels like you have done something weird. Whereas when you're already in past tense, you still have past perfect, so I can still go back in time, and I have future tense, so I can go forward in time, and it just beautifully works in storytelling. So that's the reason why people argue for it. But here's the reality. yes, it's stupid in third person. You know, John says, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, John said. Like, we've read John said. We don't want to hear John says. We want to hear John said. But the reality is 30 to 40% of the readers are going to put the book down specifically for the choice you made in point of view. So you're going to struggle to get a reader, and then you have a 30 to 40% chance of that reader putting the book down on the first paragraph. Why would you do that? That is so just self-destructing that it's not even funny.
I am one of those 30% people.
Me too.
I truly, truly struggle when a piece of prose is written in first person present tense. I wrestle.
Yeah, it used to be higher, but it's only about 10 to 15% of the people now who cannot stomach reading first person present tense. It has lowered because the industry is pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. But I'm also one of those people. I will not read, I read through Hunger Games because of the educational value of it, because I do teach writing and, so on and so forth. But I would never have read it for pleasure, just not. I mean, I watched the first 2 episodes of Velma. I would never have watched those for pleasure because there's literally no pleasure to be had in them. But since I critique things and talk about things and all that, I had to suffer through that to find out, wow, it really is the worst. It's got the worst rating of any television show in the history of television. And I watched
the first episode of that, and then my nephew
I forced you to do that.
You did. And then my nephew was like, let's watch another one to see if it's as bad. I'm like, no, like the Finnish language, this episode has no future. I don't know if you caught my joke there.
Oh.
We're talking about tenses. Do you know the Finnish language has no future tense?
Really?
Has no future tense at all whatsoever.
Is it just because Finnish people don't believe there's going to be a future for Finland?
It's because when the winter is so dark and so cold, you cannot think of the future. Actually, the way that I explain it is normally, it's because Finnish people will never say, I will do something, because that implies a certain amount of doubt. If you say you're going to do a thing, you are going to do a thing. So if you want to say that you're going to do something next week or next week Saturday or in the future in Finnish, how you would phrase it is you would say, I am doing this thing tomorrow. There is no will.
Interesting.
It's a commitment.
I was also just going to make the joke is because you don't feel there's a future because you share a border with Russia. But
no, we were a Russian colony already. Now we have assassins. I'm sure you've seen that robot picture. Like they show you the Finnish forest. It's just snow covered, right? It's just this snow covered Finnish forest, which in winter is basically the whole country. My garden's currently like 1 meter 3 feet under snow, and
I mean it's freezing here. It's like 50 degrees today.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, okay, that's cute. They show you this picture, and then they're like, pick all the squares where there's a Finnish assassin. Prove you're human.
That's good. Yeah, I'm actually excited to pick you up at the airport in July here when it's going to be 112, 114 degrees, and just watching your face when you come off that plane into the oven that is the desert of Las Vegas in July. It's going to be hilarious.
I'm just quietly going to melt into like a puddle.
It's going to be hilarious. All right. You've never read a production book that's written in third person present tense, not once. And if there is one out there that is production, I'm not saying there's not some indie press books out there that are that way, but there's a lot of problems with a lot of different things that people do in the indie press. Not that bad mouthing indie press. I'm literally going exclusively indie press for the rest of my career. So I'm definitely not bad mouthing the thing as a whole, but there's no gatekeepers, so people can do whatever they want, and if they want to do it, then they do it, and they don't have to worry about anything. However, you're not going to find any successful production books out there that are like that because people just don't. You're losing readership because of it. I don't care if you like it, unless you just are a masochist who just likes getting punched in the face. Just stay away from third person present tense. That's really the end of that discussion.
So my second truly like stop doing this is too many POVs. If you have a D&D adventuring party doing their thing, okay, and that's your story. Okay? It's basically these 5 friends doing things together. Do not make all of them the POV. I understand that a D&D party, everybody would be a POV, but that is not a fun book to read.
Or at least think about it in one of 2 ways. So I divide it between adventure fantasy and epic fantasy. So I have 5 POVs in my epic fantasy Genesis Oblivion saga, but each one is an individual hero. They have their own backstory. They have their own reason for getting into the story. They have their own motivations and goals. They have their own desires that don't align with any of the others. They are not some pack of, one group trying to do one thing. Each one of them, which is why they'll end up hurting each other, because they're not in it for, what I'm in it for is not in it for what you're in it for. Maybe we're both trying to kill the dragon, but I'm trying to do it for a completely different reason than you. And that reason may conflict with what you're doing. And my way may actually stop you from doing it. And that's where epic fantasy comes into play, where every single character has their own theme, their own story arc, their own motivation, their own growth path, and everything like that. Adventure fantasy is, we've already talked about this, it's more of the 5-man band. So you can actually, so maybe this, and I don't want to go against you and play devil's advocate here, because I also agree with you on this. But in my opinion, if you do the 5-man band and all of them are POV characters, but there's only one story arc with one theme, so everybody is there for the same reasons, everybody has the same thing, everyone has their own individual growths and they have their own weaknesses that they're trying to overcome and all that, and that's great, but it's still one character. It's a 5-headed one character. That's really what a 5-man band is. The Scooby-Doo gang is one character divided into 5 different people. And so each one of them get a little bit of screen time. Each one of them becomes a POV or whatever. But really, it's one character who is, driven by base urges like hunger, and that's it. It's one character who is more of a slacker and a stoner. Now, both of those one characters are afraid, but they're still the same one character. And then there's a piece of that character that's also the brainiac character. There's a piece of that character that's the strong man of that character, but it's still one Scooby-Doo gang, and they're all going forward as one to do one thing. And the nice thing about having 5 heads is you can split them off. Shaggy and Scooby can go off on a little side quest and they can do something, but really everybody's going down the same path to reach the same end. We're going to unmask the one dude who's pretending to be a ghost, and he's going to be like, I would have got away with it if it wasn't for you damn kids. Like, it's still just one character. And that does make it more interesting than just having one character go down that path. So in that instance, if you're paying attention that you have one story and one theme, you're just running a 5-headed character, I don't mind making all of them POV characters. However, you do have to then make sure that each one has some type of weakness that they're overcoming individually, which they do a really good job of in every 30-minute episode of Scooby-Doo. In every episode of Scooby-Doo, all 5 heads overcome something personal to get to the end of it. And so I don't mind giving that screen time to each one of them. I think what you may be more sensitive to, because you've mentioned this before, it's like, we're in a bar and the discussion that's happening affects the bartender emotionally. And even though the bartender has nothing to do with the story at all, and is never going to be here again, we're going to slip into the bartender's POV and, let him give his emotions to it because it affects him in this moment of his life. But then we never see the bartender again because we leave the city and never come back. I think that might be something, because I know you've railed against that. But I think you can have multiple POVs that don't necessarily, as long as you're treating them as one story.
Yes, but so that being said, if you have a bunch of characters, let's say, and you're writing a love triangle, and really it's about 2 characters, because love triangles are actually about 2 characters. don't try and shoehorn the third POV in because you want to show how jealous he's feeling. Like,
right. See, but that's not a 5-man band. That's not one group of characters doing one thing with one story arc. You actually, now that's a completely different thing. And you are ruining the tension by adding that third person in there as a narrating character.
And don't ask me to care about 9, 10, 11 POVs.
Yes.
I struggle to work up enthusiasm for 5.
Right.
That's about the outer limit of what I'll accept POV wise. I start getting real edgy when you start like getting over 5 POVs.
Yep.
So, you know, every POV had better than like have some like relevance. Don't try and make me care about all the characters and show me this individual moment of pain in this character. I don't care. I don't care. Show me how that pain is impacting the characters that I actually care about. Yeah. That's much more interesting to me.
Yes. Yes. And, you know, there's a lot of it has to do with also building. So with Genesis Saga, in the first book, you get 5 POV characters. One does not make it. One falls before the end. So you end the book with only 4 POV characters. I add 2 new POV characters in the second book. So technically you're up to 6. However, it's 4 that you've already spent a lot of time with. So I'm really only adding the 2, and it doesn't have the same impact of starting with it. Now, when we switch over to the 20 book series that I've been talking about, that hopefully it's not going to drop in 23 because of the whole cancer thing. We're still on pace with it. We're going to try to get it out in 24. But we also lost an author during all of that. So now there's 3 of us doing it. So we've had to shift some things around and push some things back. But anyway, it has 8 POV characters from jump. So one of the things that I decided to do, and, you know, when we talk about this stuff and you make these decisions as an artist, you're always taking a risk because you don't know what's going to work. Even if you're doing the exact same thing that 10 other people have done before you, does not mean, because your situation is different and your writing style is different and how you roll it out is different and your characters are different and the time of the world is different and the reader's, you know, mindset is different, and you just don't know what's going to work until you do it. So you're always taking a risk. But since I had 8 characters, I decided to do something that may be risky, but I'm doing it because I think it's going to work. And so far, my beta readers have been pretty happy with it and all of that. But I actually came up with, so initially when I sat down and did the 20 novel saga, I took the 8 characters and they all have a trilogy. They all have a 3 novel story arc that gets spread out between, you know, basically 15 novels between all 8 of them. It's actually about 2.5 novels that each get of screen time. And it's all laced in just like you would normally do. And then they each individually have to finish their own individual stories because that's a part of a much bigger arc that is this Chaos War, which also starts at the beginning. And 2 of the characters are actually running through those. And, you know, all the way, you know, so for all 5 seasons, all 20 novels, they're running through that. But I decided to create a standalone novella story for all 8 characters that happens before their story starts. And I'm giving you that complete. So the first novel, which is 150,000 words, is actually 6 25,000 word novellas. They are not threaded together. So you get 25,000 words of Latimus on this adventure story. Then you get 25,000 words of, I think the next story is Atum. He's a human kind of cleric kind of dude. So you get 25,000 words of him doing something. And these are things that do not necessarily have anything to do with their trilogy, but obviously there's world building going on. And obviously they were setting up all this stuff. But the risk is that you don't see Latimus again until halfway through the second novel. Because since there's 8 characters and there's only 6 characters that can be in the first book, then there's 2 more, there's another 50,000 words at the beginning of the second book. That's 2 novellas before the actual story starts, with everybody being, you know, a chapter of this character, a chapter of that character, back to this character, back to that character, and so on and so forth. You don't see Latimus's story again until halfway through the second book. He's the first story, and now you have basically 200,000, 175,000 words that you're going to read that don't have Latimus in it before you get back to Latimus. That's a risk that I'm taking. And I know it's a risk. I know I'm taking a risk on here. But what I'm hoping, and again, I'm an artist, so you have to take your risks. You have to, do the best you can and hope that it works. What I'm hoping is that by individually allowing the reader to really connect with a character one-on-one on an individual side quest that is a part of the world, and it does impact the bigger stuff and all of that. But I'm hoping that by doing this, I'm overcoming the fact that I'm going to start you off with 8 characters that you have to love. Individually, you fall in love with each one of them by themselves. You get to go on your own little date with just you and that character, and you get to be romanced by that character and fall in love with them, and then set them aside and then go on another date with a new character. And I'm hoping, and like I said, so far the beta team has been very positive in their response to how we're doing this. But yeah, you have to think about this. If you're going to run a bunch of characters, you have to know that only you care about everyone. Really, the way it works out, and that was actually one of the things that I was going to say, only you care about, by default, everything in your story. Everything else, you have to buy the loyalty of the reader. You're a salesman, and you have to buy them to actually give a crap about anything else. Everything, even the first character that you introduce, you have to buy their loyalty with emotional hooks and situations and so on and so forth. So because this is such a large thing, it's 20 novels, and because it's so 8 POV characters that you're following, I chose to try something that no one else has tried ever before in the history of storytelling.
But here is my thing, right, with the POVs, and I think you've just put your nail on it. If you have bought my love enough to read your story and to be invested in your POVs, do not throw it away for a one-off POV.
Right.
Don't do that. Don't throw it away for like a side character whose story doesn't actually go anywhere.
Right.
It doesn't strengthen it. It doesn't make me more interested. I don't care.
Yep. Because there's only these 8 POVs in the story. And no, not all of them survive. But they all survive basically to the end. Spoiler alert on that. But they do not all survive the story. But there's only 8 POVs in the realm. There will only be 8. They start with 8. I will never. It's like with Genesis, I actually build, and by the 3rd book, there's actually 9 POVs, I think, in the 3rd book.
See, I went from 1 POV
right.
to 3 POVs, and I'm going to end the series on 4 POVs.
Right.
But I am parsimonious with my POVs. I am very you have to convince me that I need to add another POV.
Well, it's also the size of the story, the size and the scope. The Genesis needs that many POVs because there's that many needed to tell that story. It's too spread out across this globe that I can't, one person just can't see the whole situation. It's a whole world thing. Same thing with the realm. The realm, I need these 8 characters. So it depends on the story that you're telling.
I have the same thing with the Ultimate Saga of Sangwheel, but what I've decided to do instead of having like a bazillion, POVs is I've split my saga into multiple separate trilogies that'll be threaded together, and they will tell their chunk of the story, their chunk of the story,
Yes. And that's actually common too. I've seen that, many a time, and that works really, really well.
It works because you're not asking a reader to invest in 12 books immediately. You're saying, here's a complete story. If you like it, there's more. If you don't want to go back and read, you can just read these 4 books. You can jump in here in the middle and you'll get all the context you need,
Right. Here's the thing, and we haven't talked about this, so, this will be me talking to you for the very first time. Here's the thing that I found where it doesn't work. Because, so like Dragonlance is a great example of this. Where I find that it doesn't work is that the audience or the writer goes, okay, well, when I do this trilogy, I'm going to change up a lot. I'm going to change up my writing style. I'm going to change up, the feel of it and everything like that. And that's, I think, where they lose the audience. So, like, case in point, the two longest running television shows, technically the three longest running television shows, but let's just focus in on two of them, South Park and The Simpsons. Both of the creators set off with the whole, these characters don't grow. Like in South Park, in 20 years, I think in the 12th year, they graduated third grade and went to fourth grade. Well, but I mean, that's it. They've gone from the third grade to the fourth grade. And then in 22 years, Bart is still in elementary school, 26 or 28 or 32 or how many freaking years that show's been on the air. Because, that's what they want. And then as a tale of caution, I love Archer, but Archer's been bleeding fans since season 4 because, first 3 seasons, they were like, we're going to give you a spoof James Bond show. And it was amazing. And then in season 4, they were like, we're going to give you a spoof drug dealer show. And then in season 5, we're going to give you a spoof 1940s island mystery show. And then in season 5 or in season 6, we're going to give you a 1920s LA noir show. And then in season 7, we're going to give you a space sci-fi show. And it's like, no. And they've been bleeding fans every season because you're not delivering on what you promised, and yes, the writing is still great. Reed is a fantastic writer. I'm still a fan of the show. But even me, I'm getting to the point where, like, I really miss this was a James Bond spoof show. And I love the James Bond spoof show. And I'll go back and watch the first 3 seasons. I've never rewatched any of the other seasons. I watched them, but I didn't rewatch them. I rewatched those first 3 seasons because I miss what I was promised, which was I'm a huge James Bond fan. And so having a spoof James Bond is just phenomenal. And so, I went back to that. And I think that's where, as from a cautionary tale, I think that's where some writers miss. It's like, oh, I've got to give it new. And so I think the reason why, or at least I'm hoping.
People read you for a reason. Like,
right.
Do what you're good at.
Right. Well, and it's not, so like Magic Fall is I would never have written Magic Fall without you, ever. It wouldn't even be on my radar. It's a more of a YA. It is more of a sci-fi-ish kind of thing. Not that I love the story and I'm having a great time with it. But, if I'm going to sit down, I'm going to come up with a more realistic, and not that this isn't real, I'm saying a more dark, epic fantasy. Realistic wasn't the right word that I should have used.
Magic Fall is also not, I would never have gone with POVs as young. Like,
right. And I changed that when we started. I was like, let's think about this. And you agreed, but you know.
But I mean, so I mean, we both adjusted for our style there. But I'm not saying don't write outside your comfort zone. Right. What I'm saying is don't try to completely alter, and especially not in the same world. I think that's the big thing. Right, because Magic Fall for both of us is a separate project.
Right,
it's in its own world with its own setup, and it's not going to cross over into Genesis or into Sangwheel or anything like that. We're gonna have fans when you do projects like this. Yeah. You're going to have fans that are like, oh my God, I love your Magic Fall series so much. It's my favorite series in the whole world. I couldn't get into your Sangwheel or your Genesis saga. I just really could, but man, you need to write some more, of this stuff because again, there's a reason why genres exist. People are attracted to certain genres. So Sanderson is the same way. He's got a superhero series. He's got his Western series. He's got his magic series. He's got his epic fantasy series. And he's got fans that don't follow him on every single one of those. And so that's fine. I'm good with that. I'm good with writing in a genre that's different than what you fell in love with me on, and you don't like it as much. And so therefore you want me to produce more in this genre. Yeah. My warning is you're writing a second trilogy in the same world. Think about the fact of why people were there for the first one, and you need to duplicate that in the second. And this is not to you, Marie, it's to the listening.
that's, I think, where people lose in that second trilogy. So Michael Moorcock, I like to use the example of the Elric of Melniboné saga, which is set, I'm pretty sure it's the same world. It's been a while, so I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure Castle of Brass saga is set in the same universe. But he changed everything. He went a completely different direction with a lot of stuff, and it was so different that, well, it's sort of the reason why, I mean, my favorite Bruce Willis movie is Hudson Hawk. Freaking love that movie. Me and my wife watched it so many times we actually wore a VHS tape out, had to buy it again. It's fantastic. It was his most money losing movie that he ever made, because people went into that expecting Die Hard, because he had just made Die Hard. And so they were expecting Die Hard. They did not get Die Hard. They panned it. They told their friends, don't go watch it. It's terrible. It's not Die Hard. Because it's not Die Hard at all. But, it's a fantastic movie. It is. I put it up there with Princess Bride and
that's high praise.
And
Stardust.
Yeah.
So you put it up there with Stardust and Princess Bride.
Yeah. And Hudson Hawk. Like, those three movies I could watch over and over and over and over again. They're hilarious. They are not serious movies. They are supposed to be what they are. And they're just fantastic. But like I said, expectations. People expected Die Hard, did not get Die Hard. And that was actually the studio's fault, because the ads ran it like it was a Die Hard. So shame on you. Your marketing team screwed up. But that's, I think, the warning that I would give you if you're going to do a second trilogy in the same world with different characters, but still all the same stuff. It should feel the same. The character, the readers want that. They want to have that comfort of what they already have fallen in love with. So just be careful with that. Don't think you have to. And I think that's the reason why a lot of sequels fail. They'll make a movie that is your standard hero's journey, and it works beautifully and everyone loves it. And then they'll come back and they'll go, well, we obviously can't make a hero's journey movie. Yes, you can. 90% of all movies are hero's journey. You absolutely can make the second one a hero's journey as well, and the third one a hero's journey, and the fourth one a hero's journey, and the fifth one a hero's journey. I mean, freaking John Wick is, you killed my dog, and so I'm going to kill all of you just brutally over and over and over again. The second movie was, you killed my dog, and I'm going to kill all of you over and over and over again. The third movie was, you won't leave me alone after I killed all of you, so now I'm going to kill all of you over and over and over again and brutally. And the fourth movie was just that same thing. It was like, I just want to get out, but you won't let me out, so I'm going to kill you all brutally over and over and over. They changed nothing, and they're massively successful because we know what we're getting, we want it, we crave it, and we just go back to it. So don't think you have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. So that's my only thing on that. If you're going to go down that path.
And I think that we have ranted for long enough. Yeah. I did want to rant about info dumps and magic, but I think that'll save for another rant.
Yeah, and my last one was too many plot devices, which comes along with the whole too many characters. Both of them are the same reason. The reason why you have too many POV characters is you, the author, are in love with them, and you think that everyone else is. It's the same thing. I've got a thing that I'm working on with a client that it's like, okay, so your story is about aliens. Well, yeah, and werewolves, and vampires, and ghosts, and time travel, and fantasy, and there's a romance, and it's like, no, you don't have room for this.
Pick a lane.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. It comes from, you love it, but you can't shove that on everybody else. Focus. All right.
That's a good note to end this episode on, and we will see you soon for another one.
Bye.